So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are fine with it, we would like to get started with the next session here. You now have heard a lot about Moon and Mars in particular, but we would like to remind you that there's much more out there to be discovered. And as it has been said in the invitation for this panel, you should not expect less than being provided with a comprehensive 360-degree view of the space exploration endeavors of today and tomorrow, and all this within 30 minutes. So this hopefully creates some expectations on your sides, but also puts some stress on our side up here. My name is Johannes von Tatten. I'm head of sales for Airbus Space Systems, and I would love to introduce this distinguished panel to you. First, allow me to start with Dr. Athena Coustenis, coming from the French National Center for Scientific Research, at the same time being president of the European Space Sciences Committee, president of the ESA Human Spaceflight and Exploration Science Advisory Committee, and president of the COSPAR panel on planetary protection. That is quite a lot, Athena, to put on your shoulders.
Yes, it keeps me busy, yes, thank you.
Athena will give us a short introduction into what you can expect out there. In the sequence of how the organizers put us on this podium, Juan Carlos Cortez, if you allow me to cut it short and maybe making it understandable for our non-European friends, responsible for space in the Spanish government in CDTI. David Parker, the director for exploration in the European Space Agency. Steve Lindsay, not only a known astronaut, but today Vice President, Space Exploration Systems in Sierra Nevada Corporations. Oliver Juckenhövel, Head of Explorations in Airbus Space Systems in Bremen. And last and definitely not least, the CEO of the year, at least if we follow the Pittsburgh Technology Council, John Thornton, CEO of Astro Robotics. We are very pleased to having each of you with us here. And Athena, the floor is yours. I don't know whether you want to do it from there or over here.
Yeah, I'll just sit here. I'm very comfortable in this seat. Thank you. As you heard, I'm Athena Coustenis from France, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Johannes, today to talk about something that is very dear to my heart, which is the exploration of our own system, solar system, and beyond, actually, in the purpose of understanding how our own planet functions, how it came about to be, what is this neighborhood we live in, and also understand the universe as a whole. So you can see there are a lot more things than just our close-by neighbors, about which the Moon and Mars, for instance, you'll hear more about later on. But when we look in the solar system and we talk about the Moon, Mars, and Venus, our closest neighbors, we actually explore our past and our future, and we understand better how our own planet came to form. If we want to go back to the origins of the solar system, we do exploration, for instance, of asteroids in the outskirts of our own solar system, going to Pluto with the New Horizons mission, which is a fantastic mission. And then we have the giant planets in our own solar system, those mini solar systems that actually tell us how you can form them in the vicinity of our own sun, but also around other stars, and how planetary systems form as a whole, and how we can explore better exoplanets and exoplanetary environments. Titan is an object very dear to my heart. We come to the moons around the giant planets, and if we want to understand a little bit better how prebiotic chemistry in a colder atmosphere and colder environment, such as our primitive Earth, can operate, under what conditions, then we had the Cassini-Huygens mission, and we'll go back in the future with a Dragonfly mission. to explore this wonderful and unique world. And as I talk about icy moons, nobody can ignore today that this is the new stars actually in our solar system are the icy moons with the undersurface liquid water oceans that we want to explore to find out what are habitable environments in our own solar system and beyond. If you have the sources of energy necessary, if you have the liquid water, if you have the organic chemistry, then you can talk about habitability in our solar system and again, around other stars possibly. But how do we explore? How do you get from planet A to planet B? And how do you look at those extreme environments, for instance, or the faraway worlds in a way that it's worthwhile for our money also and for our time? The enthusiasm of scientists like myself is a strong motivation, but it's not enough perhaps. So we need innovative architectures for the different missions. We need propulsion methods. We need remote sensing with orbiters, but also descending and landing probes to be able to dig, for instance, to be able to extract samples. You're going to hear more about sample return from different bodies in our own solar system. And we can imagine things like balloons in different atmospheres, if they're thick enough to support them, and all kinds of different probes to look at the plumes that we find now on the icy moons. But more than that, we need an adequate new instrumentation that will take us there and allow us to make the kind of measurements we need. So the fleet of missions we currently have in our own solar system is impressive, and it allows us to explore not only our neighborhood, but also the universe as a whole. But those missions that are foreseen in the future, we have CHEOPS, for instance, for exoplanets, and a whole new set of missions from TESS, JWST, Ariel, and other missions coming up that will allow us to go as far as exoplanets, other planetary systems. And I wanted to stress that all of these missions, this fleet, it's very important to see it comes under coordination and international collaboration that plays a very, very important role in those endeavors. So our view of the universe will change dramatically as time goes by. We're on the verge of new astounding discoveries with these fleets and telescopes in the solar system. And this is just a way to depict this. You have two different views of our own solar system, 475 years apart from the Copernicus view in 1543 to the Atlas of Space by young biologist Eleanor Lutz. A map of the solar system showing actually the precise orbital patterns of everything in there, including 18,000 celestial objects. And it's using data from NASA, from ESA, and from public archives. So a solar system, I would claim, has then become more precise, beautiful, and intriguing thanks to our exploration. And it's in the human nature for us to explore. It's a sign of progress, and advanced and alive civilization. It inspires people, and in particular the younger generations. So Johannes, I would like to end by emphasizing that as a scientist, I see space exploration not only as our destiny, but also as our duty, you know, as Buzz Aldrin would say, because it's not only about satisfying our curiosity or living our dreams, but also about concrete and solid applications for Earth citizens all over the world in all kinds of areas.
Athena, thank you so much for this lively introduction into a literally large topic. If we start a bit closer to Earth anyhow, I think Steve, as a 5-time astronaut, there's nobody better to ask than you. What do you think are the highlights, the additional opportunities ISS offers for the years to come?
Well, that's a really big question, and I could talk probably all day about that. ISS is a fantastic platform that we built multinationally, which is probably one of the greatest contributions of that platform so far, in addition to all the research. But when I think about the space station and the future, the exploration we're talking about, you know, going to the moon with our eventual goal, really our early goal of being Mars, and that's what we need to focus on. I see ISS as an enabling platform that continues. You know, we do all kinds of research on the space station today. or you name the field. But then when you start thinking about exploration and lunar exploration, I tend to think of what we're planning in the future with a lunar gateway, a lunar landing, the intent of the gateway being enabling exploration architecture, not just for the moon, but eventually to go to Mars as well. I tend to think of those things in a system. And when you're looking at research and what you want to do in the future, you need to focus on all of those areas. And so there are things, for example, on ISS that we need to test out before we go to Mars. For example, closed-loop environmental control life support systems, something that's very, very reliable, more reliable than what we have on the space station today. Those technologies, we don't really need to go probably into lunar orbit or beyond to be able to test those things. We can test those right here in low Earth orbit where it's a little cheaper. We can bring parts up and down, and we can develop those systems. Another objective of ISS that's really important is if we want to go explore in the future, we have to think about how do we commercialize low Earth orbit so that the nations that are participating in ISS and other nations that want to participate have the funds and the resources available to go do that exploration. So one of the goals that we're working on in ISS is how do we commercialize it? How do we make this wonderful facility that all of these nations participate in, how do we make it truly commercial? How do we get commercial companies to take over operations of the space station or a variation of space station and make it truly self-funded so that the governments can participate in the space station without necessarily owning space station. So that's a huge opportunity for ISS as well, and this commercialization story is just as important as the experimentation we do on ISS because both things will enable exploration in the future. Our own company is heavily involved, our Dream Chaser program getting ready to deliver cargo to space station. That's an example of a facility that can do research, our vehicle can do research, but it also can land anywhere in the world, and it's specifically designed to be commercial in that it can launch from any rocket and land anywhere in the world that you can land a 737 spacecraft. So what I see the ISS is there's a huge amount of research left to be done in radiation, human research, all kinds of areas, all of these enabling technologies for exploration. And in the end, when we're all said and done and we're out doing exploration, the ISS or in the future something that replaces it, there will still be a need for that in low Earth orbit to enable those basic scientific pursuits we need to achieve our eventual goals out in the solar system.
Thank you, Steve. If I may turn to you, John, Astrobotics has been awarded a NASA contract for delivering payloads to the moon on your Peregrine lander, hopefully already in 2021. So commercial delivery is soon going to be a reality. Which capabilities and services need to be made available with the help of commercial initiative like yours to enable and sustain a human presence on the moon? And then, of course, one day beyond, if we follow, no, as we want to follow Athena.
Yeah, first is that going to the moon is the next step as a species. It's our practice ground. It's the place we need to go to learn to live off the land and find and use resources on another planetary body. When humans go into space now, we bring all of our resources with us. If we can learn to use the resources on the moon, then we can really become true explorers in space. But it all starts with transportation, and that's fundamentally what we're about. We're about making the moon accessible to the world and making it possible for space agencies the world over to routinely, affordably access the surface of the moon. And that means that you need to have regular routine flights. You need to be going to multiple destinations on the moon, equator, poles, where the hotspots are with the resources. And then over time, we need to build up the capability of extracting those resources and turning them into useful products at the end of the day, be it rocket fuel or water for hydroponics or growing food or whatever else. But I think it again all starts with that transportation. Our first mission, we have up to 14 NASA payloads on the first one. We have 14 non-NASA payloads. We're going to be bringing 7 other nations with us to the surface of the moon. We're incredibly excited at that in particular because there's only been 3 nations that have ever landed on the moon, and they've all been superpowers. And we're about to change that with our next mission to the moon. We're really, really excited to have the whole world joining us, not just space agencies, but also universities and even individuals. We have a small program called DHL Moonbox that's designed to carry mementos from individuals to the surface of the moon. And it's all about making the moon accessible, making it possible for all of us to touch the moon in some particular way. And I think commercial platform that can be ultimately sustainable and affordable in the long term is a key for unlocking the moon and ultimately our solar system and the best way to get to Mars.
Thank you. Oliver, if we want to go first to the moon, then to Mars, and then beyond, we need to transport stuff and people back and forth. So Airbus is on the forefront to develop a so-called moon cruiser concept for continued transport to and from the future lunar orbit station. Could you give us a little update on this, and how would you get to where Athena wants to lead us?
That's a very good question. Thank you for that one. To start with, I think it's all based on what we're doing together with the ESA, NASA, and Lockheed Martin for the Orion spacecraft. So we're responsible, we're building the European service module on behalf of the European Space Agency. And that means we have a very powerful powerhouse, as the name says. It provides propulsion, power in terms of electricity, but also consumables, air to breathe, water to drink. So basically we have a platform that is capable of delivering what crew needs in order to survive in that fierce environment. So that's already a very good starting point, right? Now, if I take a look at the requirements that we have been designing against, this spacecraft, Orion spacecraft, is literally designed to fly to Mars. So the good news is that the vehicle is capable of doing that. The bad news is that crew probably still would not survive. So from that perspective, there is still some way to go. But it's important to see that technology that we are having and mastering today is capable of going there. So that's already a good news in the direction of Athena. The question is, what do we have to do in order to make it sustainable, as John also rightfully was saying. So the question that we were asking ourselves is, how can we build on this technology platform, European Service Module, which is existing, to capitalize for more applications? And then we're excited to see that the ideas start resonating to have a larger scale landing on the lunar surface in support of the Artemis program, but also the capability for logistic resupply to the gateway. Now, we believe that if you build on a crew-rated certified propulsion subsystem, you can scale up with, let's say, not easy, but affordable effort. And that allows us to make progress rather quick than late, to simply open up new opportunities. And that's very important. If we talk about space transportation very much to what astrobotics is doing on a smaller scale on the lunar surface, this is an enabler. This is an enabler for future opportunities. So let's think about all the applications, be it science, be it commercial applications, but also in support of people who want to be on the lunar surface. We need to bring resupply, air to breathe for them as well, or the suits, such that the vehicle that are supposed to land on the lunar surface can do that with less weight, so more affordably and quicker. So that's a whole infrastructure which is built up that will allow doing quite a bit of new opportunities for everybody in an environment where the moon is more and more connected to Earth. And then we will see how this expansion process will go beyond moon after we've been to moon. But I agree with John that the next reasonable stepping stone to credibly and sustainably do something will be the moon, and then we'll look forward.
David, John reminded us that so far only 3 superpowers landed on the moon, and if I count right, the Europeans are not among them. Could you elaborate a bit on the ambitions the European Space Agency has with regards to mission to the moon, Mars, and definitely beyond? So how would you follow Athena?
Thank you very much. How to capture the scale and ambition of Europe's space exploration program? Well, first to say, it's the complement within ESA of the scientific program. The scientific program being exploring the entire universe with missions that are looking to the early history of the universe, looking back to black holes. The first attempt to measure gravitational waves will be done by ESA's LISA spacecraft in space. We have Bepi Colombo on its way to Mercury right now. The landing on Huygens nearly 15 years ago now. Gosh, it's extraordinary. The most distant landing ever achieved by humanity by the Huygens probe on Titan. Today, a European astronaut is commander of the International Space Station, and that is where we start. Our program of exploration is based on these 3 destinations where humans will one day live and work, and we are living and working continuously in low Earth orbit now. So it's why I'm wearing my Earth to Mars socks today. So the blue represents the Earth, and the red of the red planet, of course. And then in between, where's the moon? The moon is in my hand here. This is a material, the lunar simulant that we use for investigating space resources, the potential to convert this stuff, lots of titanium dioxide and other materials, into pure metals and oxygen. So that gives you a hint. We see the moon as the next place where humans will live and work, and so our missions and our projects are taking humanity in that direction with the service module for Orion that Oliver's already talked about. But we will land working with our Russian colleagues on the surface of the moon and drill below the surface in the south polar regions to search for water ice. Scientifically fascinating, where did it come from? We don't know. It has about the origins of our solar system, but also a step towards using the water ice to support human explorers one day. We're also investigating the environment of the moon, and one of those payloads that John mentioned, so it's a European payload, will be landing, will be taken with the astrobotic lander, so we hope it works. It's an important payload to investigate the exosphere of the moon. And with the Lunar Gateway, we want to contribute towards building up our spaceport around the moon, if you like, the first spaceship around another celestial body, a vehicle that can change its orbit, move into deep space, come back again, explore that environment, learn to live and work in deep space before we make that big leap of going to Mars. And we don't forget Mars, because today ESA has 2 spacecraft in orbit around Mars. Mars Express has been there since Christmas Day 2003. It is the most it tackled the science of Mars from its outer atmosphere to its subsurface. And that's complemented now with the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, the largest spacecraft by far in orbit around Mars, investigating this mystery of the trace gases of methane, but also mapping the subsurface water and ice below the surface. Scientifically fascinating again, but again preparing to understand the planet and its potential to support humans, human life. And then with our rover mission, the Rosalind Franklin rover, which is now under test in the labs of Airbus in Toulouse, to make the first attempt to get below the surface of Mars, the first 3D exploration of Mars, again, to get below the radiation that will have destroyed any evidence of biological material on the surface of Mars, to get below the surface the first time with a miniaturized life search laboratory. And that's a stepping stone to our vision of participating in the first round trip to the red planet to do Mars sample return.
Thank you. Juan Carlos, in order to allow David to do all these wonderful things and also what you have shown us what should be done on the International Space Station, meaning at least the European contribution to this, we need you currently preparing the next so-called ministerial council of the European Space Agency in the beautiful city of Seville. Juan Carlos, though I think you're quite busy with that. Spain, of course, has its own space projects as well, among them the CHEOPS mission, with a launch coming up in just a few weeks from now. So what would be, of course, a key achievement, not only for Spain, but for all of us. What would this mission like to accomplish?
Thank you, Johannes. This is a very good question. As you said, we are preparing now the ministerial conference in Seville. We are very busy, but we are eager to know the outcome of the launch and the investigation to be done with CHEOPS. As you know, CHEOPS is the first exoplanet mission developed by ESA. It's already in Kourou, and will be launched at the end of the year. So we are very happy and very, let's say, excited with this launch. I would like to emphasize 2 aspects of the mission. First, the scientific one. CHEOPS is developed to accurately measure the size of the exoplanet. I mean, it's not a mission developed to discover new exoplanets. No, this is not the objective. The objective is to measure the size. The size of the exoplanet together with the mass of the planet could give us very important information, in particular the average density. This will show us this is a rocky or a gassy planet, and we will give clues on the potential emergence or the compatibility of the emergence of life with this exoplanet. And apart from that, CHEOPS will provide us with a very valuable information in the sense that this mission will single out some specific exoplanet to further study them. I mean, this will be a valid input for the coming mission on exoplanet visa, in particular Plato in 2026 and Ariel in 2028. Apart from this scientific aspect, I would like also to highlight the industrial aspect of CHEOPS. CHEOPS is the first example of what we call a small mission in the frame of the European Space Agency. This is a mission conceived and developed to reduce costs and, very much important, to reduce the time to launch. The technologies involved in CHEOPS are technologies mature. All technologies have already flown. I mean, the technological risk is rather low, but it's a very ambitious mission, scientifically speaking. It's important to know that this concept of a small mission is targeting to have good science with a lower investment. And I think that CHEOPS is a very good example of this mission. I would like to finish saying that the prime contractor of the CHEOPS mission is Airbus Spain, and we are collaborating with our Swiss colleagues who are responsible for the instrument.
Thank you. Athena, among Jupiter's icy moons, there are at least 3 bearing water. You have been heavily involved in the preparation of ESA's mission to Jupiter's icy moons, shortened JUICE. What can we expect from this mission?
Yes, as we just heard, this is a stepwise procedure. I agree, we have to go to the moon, then we're going to go to Mars. As Dave said before, when we went to Titan and we landed there with Huygens, it was the furthest place anybody has landed in the solar system. And those discoveries of the potential for habitability far away from the traditional habitable zone, which stopped right after Mars, actually, is a mind-blowing discovery for scientists. It tells us that we can go further out in the solar system and still have all these ingredients for habitable worlds that take us to exoplanets and looking for exoplanets in the habitable zone. So by studying those moons, we have the JUICE mission now, we have Europa Clipper from the United States also coming up, we have the Dragonfly mission, and we have 4 of these bodies at least with undersurface liquid water oceans. The question is, are all the ingredients for habitable conditions united in those bodies? And this is why we need to go out there and explore. And everything we learned from the moon and Mars, I'm sure, was going to be very helpful for us in all these endeavors.
Thank you very much. So we have still been given 2 minutes, and therefore we can take at least 1 question from the audience. Who has a question to one of the participants, or to all of them, or comment to make?
It must have been a comprehensive exploration of exploration.
Voila. So I think we accomplished our mission.
Are we allowed to then talk about our fantasies and exploration?
Yes. No, but what I would really hope is that each of you took something out of this, an inspiration, an idea, an objective, a mission, finally. This is how missions are being born, and then we come to something very earthly. Usually, in order to complete these missions, we need some ambition and we need some money. And the further we go, well, probably it doesn't become cheaper. So with all these aspirations and John, I think your company and you are a good example of how innovation can get us further, not always with less, because I think that's a dangerous mission statement, but gets us further with an intelligent way of doing it. And Steve, I think you show in yourself and your company, Sierra Nevada, shows what humans can achieve and what an innovative company can achieve. And therefore, let's take this example as an inspiration for all of us. We wish you a good further conference and now a very earthly good lunch for the ones who are hungry. Thank you.